All right, BCA101, Introduction to Computers and Information Systems. We're in week 5. Just finished up the whole cycle. First couple units in terms of the outline. We had our first assessment. Gone through at least one cycle of skills-based. Currently work on word processing and so forth. All right. Today we reviewed and added a few new things. We talked about binary digits. We need to understand what a bit is and what a byte. We reviewed that. We talked about the ASCII code. We can arrange bits in a certain order based on that code to represent something. For example, that's a capital A and a capital B. You don't need to memorize any of that. We just need to understand that information or data sent through computers is represented as ones and zeros. Is the easiest way to understand that. That led us then to word processing size. Some of the old computers back in the early 80s, mid 80s, some of the word processor size was 4 bits and 8 bits, 16, 32 now would be common on a little bit older computer, and all newer computers, the processors should be a 64-bit word size. What that means to us, if we're going to download some software, we should know what our computer is, so we download the correct software version. The 64-bit is better than 32 bits. We talked about bits moving either from computer to computer or up to the internet and back down. We talk about bits per second. It can be represented using BPS, bits per second, or B/S, representing bits per second. And then we talked about an example. A lot of the Ethernet, wired networks, like here on campus, operate at 100 million bits per second. Some of the wireless G, a little bit older, was 54 million bits per second, and N is faster than that. And we also have gigabit, and fiber can be extremely fast. So you just need to have some perception of the difference in the speeds. Then we talked about hardware some more. Believe it or not, we talked again about system unit and motherboard, that electronic circuitry in which all these things connect. We reviewed briefly memory, and I have an asterisk there by RAM, how important it is, how much RAM you have, and cache to affect performance. We talked about processors. They have registers in which they store information in, ones and zeros. For example, a processor with a 64-bit word size will manage 64 bits in the registers. The more, the better. And then processors have arithmetic logic unit. They can do arithmetic and they can make logical decisions. They can decide if one group of bits are bigger and smaller than the other, or if they're equal, and they can do arithmetic with it. The bus, there's all kinds of buses inside system units. The whole concept is the bus is where the bits are moved internally. We can add a graphics card to take some of the work of manipulating the graphics off of the main processor, if the graphics card has a processor on it. How the computer keeps track of what's being sent where is done with clock speed and is measured in gigahertz. The faster the clock speed, the faster the computer will process. And then when we run out of room and RAM to keep track of all of our programs and data, the operating systems are smart enough to put some of that information on the hard drive in something they call virtual memory. Microsoft calls it a page file. Linux calls it a swap file, but it's space on the hard drive that acts like memory. All major types of ports. USB is most popular, but we still have FireWire, and there's some newer ones. There's a new version of USB that's a lot faster, like FireWire is probably going away in the near future. And then we talked about how we power the devices, the power supply. Yeah, some devices, if you're If you're using them like for gaming or graphics, you might need a power supply that's big enough to power everything in there. A big issue with power is batteries. We talk about having batteries long enough to make our devices function. If you buy a laptop and it has a high clock speed, it has a big processor, so to speak, a lot of processing power and so forth, it's going to take more electricity to make that run, which then would drain the battery faster. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So, this is an overview of the items we talked about off the outline today.